crazy the impact that we can make when we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt and believe in ourselves. And so, for those who might be sitting thinking, I do want to write, or I do want to speak out, or I do have a message, or I do want to share something, perhaps in your second or third chapter of life, just like you're doing here, Colleen, like, please, please, please do that, because the world needs what you want to share. And it's up to you to give yourself permission to do it.
Welcome to We Be the Change. I'm Colleen Akiko. In part 2 of my conversation with Leisa Peterson, we move from insight into practice. How to name patterns without getting pulled into the fear. How to hold compassion and boundaries. And how real strength looks in everyday moments when it would be easier to shut down or lash out. Before we begin, if you'd like a free, relaxed community space to practice presence and reflection together, visit the Bowl of Light Café through SongRise.live. Welcome to We Be the Change. I'm Colleen Akiko. In part 2 of my conversation with Leisa Peterson, we move from insight into practice. How to name patterns without getting pulled into fear. How to hold compassion and boundaries. And how real strength looks in everyday moments when it would be easier to shut down or lash out. So before we begin, if you'd like a free, relaxed community space to practice presence and reflection together, visit the Bowl of Light Café through SongRise.live. That's SongRise.live. I like that you don't just kind of put out the concepts, but you help us become aware. As the saying goes, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So you talked about patterns and what healing looks like and what we can do, even as we're navigating the paradox, the many paradoxes of our time, things that we can do that really make sense as humans, not as gurus, but humans.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could talk about some of those things, what we can do, for instance, to take care of our own nervous system and why it's simple. Because I think we're kind of trained that if it's not really complicated, it must not be what's best, because what's best has to be complex. And not so.
Yeah, the ego mind would like to have us think that way, but
Yeah.
we're returning to the roots. Yeah. So these steps that I had outlined, did you want to go through some of that?
One thing that I really liked is the kind of resistance that's going to do a pattern reset. It's going to have an impact on the entire system of which we are all part of collectively. You had a little section on it. Here's what high vibration resistance looks like. Name the pattern without feeding the fear. That's so simple. And yet, until we try it, we're like, yeah, la da 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 da. But when we do it, when we say, oh, look, they're doing the divide and conquer thing again. Oh, okay, well, that's really old. And as soon as you realize that if we can just keep you a little distracted and a little hostile towards your neighbors, a little suspicious, then we can do our shenanigans on the side and, move the chess pieces that you are to where we want you to be and get you completely off the board. And, when we say, oh, wait a minute, there you go again. Oh, look, it's happening every hour of every day these days, the divide and conquer thing. So that's just a teeny weeny thing. But strategy, our being divisive amongst ourselves. How does that affect those who are trying to push me like a pawn across the chessboard?
Yes.
You talked about practicing fierce compassion. And again, you get into that paradox that you can be understanding, but you don't have to be the doormat. You don't have to tolerate abuse. Chris and I were just out on a walk today, and we encountered somebody that we know has hurt people that we know, and historically has been very two-faced. We're walking our dog, and he stopped and talked to us. And I just noticed that he said something to Chris and Chris didn't answer. So I stepped back and I just kind of said, yeah, it's a nice day for a walk, isn't it? Or something like that. And hey, we got to get back, got a Zoom call. So we just kind of waved him on, but I kept the door open. So if he ever decides he wants to make a change, we got no resistance on our side. And I was talking with Chris about it on the way back. And he's like, I don't know why, but I just clam up around that person. He couldn't even hear what the person was saying. I'm like that with other people, but with this person, for some reason, I'm not. And, when Chris said that, I got this picture in my head of bellows, the thing that you squeeze and it makes air, and the fire in the fireplace goes, it fires up. We got to squeeze the bellows in that moment. It's like what you're saying, practice fierce compassion. That's just not this little birthday candle flame. That's a fierce fire. And we all have it. Our tendency is to get small when we're around what our little inner child is saying, ooh, he's a scary person. And get out the bellows, whatever that means for us. Yeah, just be aware of that.
That idea that hurt people hurt others or get just so trapped. And having come from a very traumatizing childhood, it was a very unhappy childhood that is part of the reason I think that I'm so focused on having a beautiful childhood now at 59 years old. But I came from that kind of trauma. And so when people are behaving from that place, there is a part of me that's like, I know what's going on here. This is coming from whatever it was. But the minute we can relate to people, even when they're causing harm, we change the way that we go about working with them in our lives. And this isn't to excuse any kind of harm they're causing or anything like that. But I do feel like this is one thing in the spiritual teachings. And I don't think a lot of spiritual teachings do a good enough job about talking about boundaries. So we already talked about that. So this is all in the context of boundaries. But it changes us at a deep level the minute we can look at someone and be like, had I lived their life, I would be just like they are.
Yes.
Period. And thank goodness I didn't, because I'm not. But this idea that we're separate from them and completely different is never going to solve the problems that we have in the world.
Absolutely right. Yeah. When you were talking about boundaries, I have felt two different ways of setting boundaries. It's been a weakness in my past. Maybe I would draw the line in the sand, but the wave would come and erase it, and then the line would be gone. So I need to draw the line with a piece of chalk on the sidewalk. The sand isn't going to work. When I'm drawing a boundary, creating a boundary out of love, it feels a lot different than when I'm creating a boundary where mostly fear is at the helm of that. It's not purely one way or the other. Usually it's a mix, but I much prefer the feeling of making the boundary out of love and being conscious of that. And I actually appreciate when people do that to me. If I'm a little out of control in some way, or I've said enough and I'm still talking, and someone just kind of lets me know, we've said enough. Little bit of a sting there, but I'm like, they're right. I need to just sit with this for a minute. Just little things like that, very instructive. And I'm very fortunate to have someone, a mentor in my life who's older and does that on a regular basis, actually. It's kind of like sometimes we can be, as she is to me, it's like if you're steering a big ship and you want to miss the iceberg, you might have to do a hard left in order to make the whole ship get out of the way. And you're oversteering the ship for a moment, and that's okay. It's so sometimes we have people and situations in our lives that cause us to overcorrect, and it's part of our learning, and it's all right. And sometimes we're that for other people as well. A lot of opportunities for that these days.
Yeah. And you mentioned the sting that we can feel whenever we are growing as humans, evolving, growing, whatever word you want to use. The ego must subside in order for us to actually grow and expand and change. And so when the ego feels that little sting or what have you, one of the best things we can possibly do for ourselves is to understand that that's the best feeling we could possibly feel because we're about to grow.
Yeah, we're getting pruned. Yeah, pruning is no fun, but you get a lot more fruit that way.
There you go.
I'm wondering if I can touch base with some of these other quotes. I love what you said about this collective process of creating safety together, that healing happens not through individual heroics, but through the collective process, creating safety together. That is such a beautiful concept to me, that we're not huddled together, trembling because the wolf is about to attack us and we're cornered, but here we are together. And because we are together, and because we have our boundaries, but we also have our open hearts. And we're together because we are united by the desire to take care of each other, to help each other come through this intact and have a better world for our children and our children's children, and for everything on the planet and in the planet. So creating safety together, not just by our individual efforts, but by being able to tune in with one another, even those that, as you say, we don't agree with. And I like what you said about we don't have to have the same beliefs, but we can agree that we're all moving this direction. And how can we help each other move this direction together?
Yeah. This whole thing that we're touching on about community and connection, for the most part, the United States has a culture of individualism, particularly the white majority is very individualistic. Even with Christianity and going to church, while there's connections that happen at church, it's still rooted in this idea that you pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You take care of your own problems and let other people take care of their problems. And that's not, the more I travel, the more I see that, it's not like that, right? In other places of the world to the level that we are. And I think that this is actually part of what's rupturing in this country right now. You can't have 348 million people all going in different directions and expect y'all to work together without a fundamental understanding that we are all in this together and we must work together.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's a big shift in consciousness that each and every one of us, if we've been raised in the United States, we don't even know how deep this goes into our psyche of this individual spirit and how harmful and damaging it is to the soul of a human being.
Oh, I heartily agree. My biggest shift took me 2.5 years, actually, because I was so indoctrinated and conditioned towards a very churchy Christianity mindset, to where I felt like if I thought any differently, I was sinning. I was committing a really bad sin. And it was the shift from having separations to seeing that there are no separations. That was a really, really hard one for me. But it's the one that made all the difference. Ironically, coming from that knowing that there are no separations. In fact, the acid test for me was putting the word separations in place of the word sin in a lot of scriptures. And I'm like, yeah, there it goes again. It works. The uniqueness of each sunbeam person is even more beautiful when I realize same source, same light, but look at how amazing it's coming through over here. Wow, I never would have imagined, because that's part of me and I'm part of them. And at the same time, right now, with all of us having the shadow sides that we do, when we see a narcissistic president coming out and his mind unraveling as it is right now, it prevents me from getting on my haunches and making some sarcastic remark or something, because I'm not above that. I could get old and get dementia too. We all, just probably wouldn't be the president. And that stretches when we see someone doing horrible hurtful, deplorable things. And we want to say, well, I'm sure glad I'm not that. Well, guess what? I am.
Mhm.
And the most bright thing that I could ever hope to be, guess what? They are. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
in there. It could be totally blocked and stifled and obscured and unapparent, but there is only one source. And if that person exists, then voila, there's the source. It could just be this teeny tiny spark. But in the grace, I am able to put my focus on that teeny tiny spark and hope that that lost soul finds their soul again.
Yeah.
It is a
I mean,
miracle.
the idea of like same, 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 and then different. And that's totally fine. But at the core,
Hmm.
each of us are, yeah, we're coming from the same place and we return to the same place. And even if you go from a very scientific standpoint, we're sharing the same air and water and planet with each other. Nobody gets out of this experience without being here. I know there's some billionaires that are trying to figure out how they can, get onto their own planet and all of that good stuff. But it's just absolute insanity to think that you can disconnect from what it is that we have here.
Mhm.
We do need to work together. And even though I feel like what we're going through is going to take a lot more time than people want, of course, or suspect it will take, I have good feelings of the idea that enough people awaken in the United States, around the world, out of this trance that realize there's a lot more of us than there are of them, and that we each need to hold ourselves responsible for the lives that we're living and creating. There isn't
Mhm.
enough responsibility being taken.
Yeah, I think the last point that you were making on the things that we can do is basically embodiment, modeling the change that we wish to see, which is the whole premise behind the We Be the Change podcast.
Mhm.
Yeah, if we want that, then we be that. So, how do we be that? This is what you said: model what you want to see, be the person who listens, who stays regulated, who can hold complexity, who refuses to dehumanize. I love what you said earlier in the post. You were talking about real strength, which is what we hope to embody in this time and what we gather together to offer to one another. When one of us is weak, the other one is strong. Real strength is secure enough to be kind. Real strength doesn't need to humiliate to feel powerful. Real strength can hold complexity, tolerate difference, and work towards genuine solutions. Real strength builds. Bullying just breaks things and calls it winning. It's so simple. I hear something like that, I'm like, of course, but it helps to have it articulated, whether it's spoken or written, just to remind us, we are strong. Love is strong, and that is who we are. Yeah.
I also want to give credit. My husband is behind the scenes a lot of times, Tim, and he'll say something and then we'll go into conversation and I'll be taking notes. And this article in particular definitely came as a group effort because he was the one who was talking about bullies and the bully on the playground and how this feels so similar to that. I said this idea of they don't want to fix anything. This is about division. And then we just kind of riffed on it. And then it became the article. But I want to give him credit. And I also want to say this is part of that beautiful essence. We've been together since we were in college and we have changed so much, particularly me, so much evolution. And somehow, because of the love at the center of our relationship, we've been able to endure so many difficulties, so many challenges, not to mention raising children and having my parents pass away and so many situations. And yet here we are in union and in cooperation and in collaboration at a time when I feel like it really matters.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much depth and richness with that kind of history. I honor that. Yeah, it is beautiful. Well, tell Tim thank you. And thank you too. I experienced that with Chris, whom you've known for years, probably before I ever met him. And sometimes it's the very thing that irritates me that saves me the next moment. He's so meticulous with details, for instance. And one minute I'll be like, okay, enough. I can't be bothered with that minutia. And then the next minute, if he had not been exhibiting the capacity to deal with the minutia, we'd be broken down by the side of the road or something. Literally, there's been so many times. So I am learning, experience by experience, the art of acceptance and appreciation. Yeah.
Yes.
It's so relevant right now in all the different expressions around us, even the ones we don't like or necessarily agree with. I do have a few friends who are politically in a different camp, and yet they're healer people. And my mind says, wait a minute, that's not possible. How could that be? But voila, they help people, they work with energy, and they support the current administration. I don't get it. However, I don't have to get it. I just keep the conversation open. I keep it respectful. And I don't push, I don't arm wrestle unless we can do it in a good way. And then I'll roll up my sleeve and we'll arm wrestle a little bit. But kind of have to agree on what are we really talking about here?
Yeah. If you can get to that place, like that's a really beautiful place. Not always in friendships can we get there, rather than focusing on what we don't agree on. Can we find the shared agreements here? Because I'm guessing that I've known you for a long time, or I know your history. I know you want good in the world. Can we agree? Maybe not what we're running against, but where do we all want to end up? What does that look like? And maybe you think there's a different pathway there than I do, but let's talk about what we really, really want in the future. And then maybe not, there's some shared understanding.
Yeah. I find that if there's a mutual respect and trust in the relationship, in the bond that we have together, that we're both going to respect that, then it can be an iron sharpens iron situation where I could get called out on something that I haven't put together in a way that goes through the wash, and vice versa. That's the ideal. And I wish I could say, yeah, this happens all the time, but it really doesn't. But I'm still in the ring. I'm still available and willing. Yeah. And learning.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this has been so delightful. I want to hear anything else that you might want to highlight. You're saying so much, not just in this post, but from your own life. I know that you have deeply impacted many lives, whether it's through the financial realm of things, and for the last year and a half, the political side of things, the national picture. I so appreciate that you're able to kind of lift off the top layer and allow us to just see in a non-judgmental way what the patterns are and what they have been for a long, long time, many generations, and what we can do actually right now that will make a difference, a real difference.
No, thank you for this conversation. It's been really beautiful. I think that one thing that's coming up to me is many of us, I said I'm 59, I'll be 60 at the end of this year. And I was not raised to believe in my voice or the power that I could have. Even when I started my company, it was a tragedy that occurred that kind of forced me out of my trance to say, well, maybe I have something to share. And it wasn't because I was brave. It was because I felt desperate to make a change in my life. And maybe even now, the problem situation that we're facing caused me to feel desperate enough to come out of my shell of, oh, you're not supposed to talk about politics. You're not supposed to talk about these things that are sort of scary, especially to, I'm a Gen Xer, like to you're questioning the establishment and it didn't feel right. But I say all of that because I'm just like everyone else, in that I didn't know that I could do this. And yet now, between the book and between my articles and blogs, like millions of people, at one point I was like, oh, I want to touch 1 million people's lives. And now it's like 10 million people's lives. Like, it's crazy the impact that we can make when we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt and believe in ourselves. And so, for those who might be sitting thinking, I do want to write, or I do want to speak out, or I do have a message, or I do want to share something, perhaps in your second or third chapter of life, just like you're doing here, Colleen, like, please, please, please do that, because the world needs what you want to share, and it's up to you to give yourself permission to do it. But I promise you, whether it's 5 people or 10 million people, I have no idea, and I have no expectation of what will come tomorrow. But all I know is that I'm very proud of myself for my ego getting out of the way and just letting my heart lead the way.
Yes. Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking back to our little segue into being all sunbeams of the one sun, that we each, being the sunbeam that we are, we don't know the nature of what this sunbeam can do until we fully step in. I mean, maybe the sunbeam that one person is seems so small, but they can go around corners and down little cracks and reach where no other sunbeam has reached before,
Yeah.
we just don't know.
Amazing.
For instance, this We Be the Change podcast, when the thought landed to have a podcast, I said, yeah, okay. I'm like, what is a podcast? I don't know. I never listened to podcasts, and it's okay, because when we find ourselves in that place of feeling totally stripped, it's a good place. And then we can say, oh, please help me. And the help that comes is the best. And we find ourselves just clothed with whatever superhuman outfit we need to have to go where we need to go, and to bring those with us as you have done. I feel so honored and very blessed to know you and to have witnessed how your life has blossomed and rippled out so much. I remember first seeing you, I think, when our kids were in hockey together. I'm like, oh, she looks familiar.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you know this, but Zoe, my daughter, she went to piano lessons with you way back. So I told her that we were getting on this call today, and she was laughing. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, that was when she was like 7 or 8. So she's 28 now. So yeah, at least 21 years.
There you go. There's an example. Also, I found that, my natural niche in previous chapters was teaching piano lessons with kids. It just felt like fun time to me. And some of those kids have gone on and done amazing things. And I just find out about it just kind of happenstance. There is a bass player who is touring, doing Broadway type of things, and he's global now. And I caught him on Facebook, and I just said some little congratulatory thing. And he said something that I had to read twice, because I thought he must have meant it for somebody else. But he said, I would have never been on this track except for you. And I'm like, what?
That's awesome.
So yeah, we never know. And it's an overflow of our own being flooded and filled with that fire and that beautiful love and grace. The Rumi poem, the darker the night, the brighter the stars. The night is definitely dark right now. And anyone who's listening is a very bright star. And so our hope and wish is that whatever has been spoken in our time together goes towards reminding each of us that we are the brightness. And at the core, all is truly well. We're not only going through this, but at some level, we're already through, and it's okay.
Beautiful.
I just want to close with something that you said towards the end of your post. Love is more powerful than fear. Connection is stronger than division. And a people united in genuine care for one another are unstoppable. Thank you for being unstoppable and helping me to be the same.
Thank you.
And I'll see you soon.
Bye. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for listening to part 2 of this series, Coming Out of the Trance with Leisa Peterson. If something here helped you stay a little more grounded, even for one breath. Let that count. Small steadiness in these days is not small. You can find Leisa at wealthclinic.com, and you can find more from me at SongRise.live, including a free place to practice the kind of inner work we were talking about in community in the online Bowl of Light Café through SongRise.live. I'll see you next time. Aloha.